Sometimes I feel like I'm just not creative enough to build in Minecraft. If you're anything like me, sometimes you get up in the morning, decide to get onto Minecraft, and you can't help but think to yourself, I want to build something really cool today. But as you make your morning tea, you remember, oh, I'm not that good at building. It's taken me a lot of work just to make all this stuff that I already have, and how am I supposed to be creative to build something else? But regardless, you decide to go get some resources in your game and start brainstorming about all the different wonderful things you could build. You think about all the amazing builders that inspire you, but the more you think about them, the more you think, how could I ever build something like that? The idea of building is like a long tunnel. It's just such a long process, and the end seems farther and farther away the more you think about it before you even get started. It's daunting. You'd rather do anything else besides build. I've been learning a lot about art recently, specifically portrait drawing, because it's a thing that I want to improve on, and this might not be a revelation, but I think that those types of things might be able to inform us on different things we can do in Minecraft. That process of learning a different skill can help us here. So let's think about that for a minute. Nowadays, when I draw, I start out with shapes. Big fuzzy lines with a bunch of shapes that kind of represent where I want to go. And I start connecting those shapes together, looking for proportions and flow lines through the drawing. And I add more and more shapes. And at the beginning, honestly, it sucks. Like, what is this thing? It looks horrifying and scary. But all it is shapes. And so I decide, well, I'm going to add some more shapes. And I'm going to add more shapes. And I'm going to refine the shapes that I've already added. And maybe I erase some things and change some shapes. But at every step of the process, I'm adding shapes or refining shapes that I've already put down. And I start big. I start with the big shapes and move towards the small shapes. And over time, through a method of adding shapes and refining them, our drawing becomes a little bit better. And eventually, you might have to play around with things a bit. It might take you a couple tries to find the right shapes that you're looking for, but there's no reason not to try. So as you find the shapes and you refine them and add more detail, eventually a picture starts to form, and, it's a lot better than I could have done a year ago, and I can be proud of that. But I think this idea transfers over to Minecraft, right? The idea that let's just start with big shapes and add smaller shapes and then refine things as we go, adding smaller and smaller details, working from big to small, and maybe we can come up with something pretty cool. So just like in our drawing, we're going to start by adding shapes. And here I picked a hexagon, and I kind of went off in a direction that I didn't really like there, so I changed it, but we're going to start out with a shape. So I decided to build something entirely without any planning beforehand, so I had no idea what this was going to be when I got started, but we're starting with the hexagon because that's the bestagon. So after adding the basic shape, we build it up a little bit, make it all the same height, and we think about where to go from there. And the place that we go is, well, we add another shape. We've gotten one big shape down, that's kind of our big fuzzy starting circle, so now we're going to add another shape. And we're going to do a little bit of refining and decide, oh, well, maybe it needs to be taller. So we're going to make it taller. That's a pretty easy thing to do. We're just adding a shape. Now, the next step in the process might surprise you, but while it rains, we're going to add a shape to our structure. I still don't know what it's going to be at this point, but I'm just going to keep adding shapes until it starts to make more sense. And just like the other ones, we're going to make this a bit taller. Now, what I decided to do in the end was take the shapes that I had already made and mirror them. So whatever I had done on bottom, I flipped it upside down and did the same thing up top. And once that was done, I decided to cap it off with some slabs. And again, I'm not really thinking in a lot of specific detail here, but at this point, I'm still just thinking about shapes. And I didn't really want to fill in the entirety of the top. Maybe I want some sort of skylight, or maybe I want a place for planters or something. I still haven't decided what this is going to be at this point, so I decided to leave some gaps in the roof. Now, at this point, I realized that I was building a library. So the thing that I really needed was bookshelves. And I decided that I was going to use oak for this, or I might change my mind. I don't really know at this point, but I knew that I just needed to get the shape of the bookshelves in. And I think at this point I was playing around with the stripped versions because it kind of matched the bookshelf color. And I was pretty happy with that, so I decided to refine the shape a little bit, add some sub-shapes, and I didn't have any bookshelves on hand, so imagine, just use your imagination. The green moss is going to become bookshelves in all of these spots. It's actually going to be quite expensive to fill this out. But for now, I had empty bookshelves and moss, so... Anyways, I started placing that, kind of refining the shape and trying to get the general sense of what would a huge floor-to-ceiling bookshelf look like in this place. And I ended up being pretty happy with that, so I started laying out the shapes of the other bookshelves that I knew we were going to have, and I knew I wanted to do something different in the middle. So I kind of offset that and decided to build it all the way across, and I realized, oh, I could actually do something kind of interesting in the middle if I added a semicircular shape that would kind of create an arc over the central pathway. And I ended up being pretty happy with that idea, but it's nothing too complicated, just a little arcing shape that connects the two sides of the bookshelf. And so you see we're going to fill in some bookshelves above that arc, but allow plenty of space to walk underneath. Finishing out the other bookshelves, or the things that would become the other bookshelves, we're just focusing on placing in all of the shapes and trying to get a feel for what the space is going to feel like when we're done. It ended up being kind of claustrophobic and intensely vertical, both of which I really liked. Now, just imagine that we've filled in the rest of these bookshelves with moss and other things, and you'll get the general idea of what we're looking at here, but we're not going to finish the build in this video because that's not the point. The point is that we can use basic shapes and refinements of those shapes to build something pretty cool. Anyways, all that to say, if you're feeling stuck in Minecraft, start with basic shapes, refine them, and repeat.